you. I'm very pleased to be back here and the team, recognizing that some very good things are happening here in San Diego and have been going on for quite some time. You know, I think in terms of the housing choice vouchers that so many landlords were unwilling to accept. And then the mayor and the council said, we will be responsible for any damage, and the resistance melted away. And, you know, those are the kind, and it cost the city almost nothing because nobody's destroying their property.
That's true.
You know, those are the kinds of things that we have to recognize. But the real key here is working together and using evidence. And that's what's been going on here in San Diego, and I think that's why the situation here is a little different than some of the other places. But, you know, we're not here to lay blame. We're here to look at best practices and just take those best practices and multiply them. And when you see, you know, a organization that's doing things the way this one is, you know, bringing in a lot of handicapped and elderly people, providing them with the kinds of services that really enhance their lives, in many cases can actually even elevate them out of the need for public assistance. Those are the things we should be doing. And, you know, when it comes to the whole issue of housing first, the way I look at it, housing first is a very good thing because it gets people off the street. As long as it's combined with housing second, which is figuring why they were on the street in the first place, and housing third, doing something about it. That's what's going on here at Stella. That's what's going on at Bluewater, and at a lot of the places that are successful, because, you know, we have to, as a society, begin to ask ourselves, what is compassion? What is true compassion? True compassion is not patting people on the head and saying, there, you poor little thing, I'm going to take care of all your problems for you. True compassion is making sure that we provide them with the tools, with the mechanisms to be able to climb the ladders, to lead the most productive life that they can, the most fulfilled life that they can. Now, there are some situations where people simply are pretty helpless. There's nothing they can do. I think as a responsible society, we have a responsibility to those individuals. That could happen to any of us at any time. But we need to have that more or less comprehensive ideology to help us make the best out of the situation. And the other thing, and I almost never conclude without saying this, is, you know, we have to stop being enemies. You know, we have to start working together, stop looking for reasons to punch people and looking for reasons to work together with people, because I think you can take the most radical conservative and the most radical liberal, and I would bet they would agree on about 90% of stuff. But that 10%, we take it and we just exacerbate it and try to create big problems so that everybody concentrates on that, instead of actually saying, what is the problem? This is America, by the way, the can-do attitude, and that's what we need to be thinking about. And in terms of homelessness, in terms of affordability, can we deal with that? Absolutely. First thing we must do is actually study it, make sure we understand what are the reasons. And, you know, when it comes to affordability, you know, you have two options. We can just throw more and more money at it and try to chase the prices as they continue to escalate. Or we can say, why the heck is it so expensive? And is there something we can do about that to make it more reasonable? And obviously I prefer the second. But I think after you've done the reasonable and logical things, if there is still a need for more money, that's when you talk about that.
Secretary, as I think many of you know, has had several visits to San Diego over the last year and a half to see firsthand how this community works together, how this community is doing things differently when it comes to getting folks off the street into a permanent, supportive, great place of their own, and the changes that we are doing in San Diego, all with one goal. How do we help people? How do we throw out bureaucracy and things that wasn't working in the past with our bridge shelters, with our permanent supportive housing, what we're doing on storage, and what we're doing with our housing commission and of course the private sector with that public-private partnership. So to all of our providers that are here today, thank you for being a part of this. We've really tried to set the goal of not being locked into just doing things the way they used to be done. To build the permanent supportive housing, to get folks off the street now, to push back on NIMBYism, to turn some of the old regulations and to change that so we can actually achieve the goal of helping people and to get them off the street. And so to our friends, all of our, as I said, team members from HUD who are here, the VA, we have Greg from Interfaith, everybody's here. To our city team, I had a chance to talk to the secretary about the changes that we are making on our community plan updates. All of the changes, again, with one goal: how do we make it easier to construct housing? How is that something that should not be feared but should be embraced? And to show what San Diego is doing in a very collaborative fashion. And so, Secretary, it's great to have you back here again in San Diego and to see and to interact firsthand with some of the folks that are really making a difference and that we're very proud of. So welcome.
From a technical standpoint, I can tell you it can all be explained with one word, that is flexibility. The ability for San Diego to deal with San Diego issues the way San Diego needs to for San Diego problems. And the flexibility that HUD, through my good friend Hunter Kurtz's department, has granted in using our federal funding, has given us the ability to be flexible in blending our money, city money, with the Housing Commission's money that comes from you to address these issues. There's a term I like to use in the way affordable housing is financed now. It's called lasagna financing. There's no longer any one block of money that comes in that covers everything, but there are layers of money from different sources. And if you're adept enough locally to take those layers and put them together into that dish of lasagna, it's really pretty tasty.
Absolutely.
But you've got to put the layers together in the way that fits the locality, and these two properties, I think, are a good example of what San Diego's been able to do, utilizing your money in the form of vouchers and home dollars, as well as city money that comes from the affordable housing from the city, and also the flexibility of the Housing Commission to blend those together. We get a very good product. But I think it's the flexibility that you all have granted to us through the Move Into Work program has been key. The great relationship we have with your PIH department, and we look forward to doing more of these going forward. I will point out that you mentioned Housing First San Diego. When we put together the Housing First San Diego plan initially back in November of 2014, which Mayor FAULCONER and the City Council President introduced at the time, we called it Housing First, but not housing only, because you've got to have the resources to provide the support to do the issues you just mentioned. I'm glad you see that here. But I will point out to you that in the near 5.5 years since we kicked off Housing First San Diego in November of 2014, we, and by that I mean the Housing Commission and the city, have together provided over 8,500 housing solutions dealing with the homelessness problem. And by solutions, I mean either getting people off the streets, helping people avoid the streets in the first place, helping connect people with loved ones in other locations, or dealing with the problems for the individual as they exist in a very person-centric way. And that's what we hope to continue doing, and we very much appreciate the flexibility that you provide to us with HUD funding to help make that happen.
I had 4 things that were important to affirmed housing to develop more affordable housing. So if you'll bear with me. One thing I did want to make a comment about is that we truly believe that the public-private partnership is the key to our success. So we've had a great relationship with Mayor FAULCONER and the City of San Diego, and Rick Gentry, of course, who's probably funded, 20 of our deals here in San Diego. Super important. I wanted to just state that I'm very happy to hear you promote Housing First, because we've heard other things about that, and we think that that's a key to success. I appreciate that. As a developer, project-based vouchers are the key for us to develop this housing. The traditional affordable family housing, we don't need project-based vouchers, but for supportive housing, it's actually the driver. Without it, we can't build any of it. Just wanted to reiterate that. On the regulatory relief side, we have 2 suggestions that I'm going to give to Hunter today. that would help speed up the process. One is at the front end of development, there are some restrictions that don't allow us to demolish buildings, even a parking lot, if we have federal funds, until the construction start. We could advance that, probably get rid of 3 months of delay that way. And then on the back end side, I know that Heather mentioned to you, certificates of occupancy versus temporary certificates of occupancy. We believe we should be able to house the people at a TCO, a temporary certificate of occupancy. Your current rules do not allow that. We have to have a certificate of occupancy. We think we could break up another 3 months right there. And then on affordable housing, getting out of the supportive housing, we're a big proponent of adding more 80% AMI units in tax credit deals. And so we think we could then leverage more debt and produce more housing. This isn't just obviously here in San Diego, but throughout the country. So we would really support you supporting Congress to add more 80% AMI tax credit units.